Hello, beautiful women on this Tier 2 Speaking Office Hours today. And I am so thrilled that we have juicy things that we get to share today. I'm just going to mute you for a second, Wendy, because I'm getting the feedback. I am so excited to be able to hear from Wendy Jones, who just finished her retreat, and it was incredible. I am so excited to share with you some things from our DTLC retreat, which was incredible. And I'm super happy to hear about things that you want to be doing for your speaking at your future retreat. We are going to continue what we were doing. Let me just sort of kick off with what we did last week so that you can remember. We wrapped up your speaking plan, so that should be finished now. You should have a finished speaking plan. And from that speaking plan, I invited you to create a rough of your keynote. So that means your title, your hook, if it's an ideal life or a pain point that you're kind of emphasizing, or if it's a little bit of both, you're like going from the low to the high, then your 3 talking points, your call to action, and then your testimonial, and then your wrap up. So that is what we need a rough of this week. And also we talked about your keynote topic. Make sure that you have a very clear topic that is the umbrella for your talking points. And then I asked you to make it interactive. And so go through each of those talking points, bullet point the sub points that you want on it. And then on the 3 talking points, you're welcome to just have 1 sub point. That's fine. You don't have to have a whole bunch. But whatever you do, make it interactive. So having a significant story, a quote, a stat, another experience, something that a thought-provoking question, something that gets them interactive, gets them thinking, gets them engaged in what it is you're doing. So you're not just talking at them. You do not want to talk at them. So that was the homework from last week. How did that go for you guys? I know it was crazy busy, sweet Wendy Jones, so I totally understand. But did anybody get a rough done, or feel like they got their talking points, or feel like they're good on that? Or is that what we need to do today to kind of get that finished up? Raise your hand if you want to do that today to get it finished up. Okay, that's what we'll focus on. So first and foremost, I want you to consider what it is specifically, if you have specific questions or what specific things you might need from this office hours, because my goal for you today is that you get whatever you need so that you can create that rough by Wednesday. Wednesday, that's what I'm saying, Wednesday. You guys can totally rock this. Now, for those of you that can do a little bit more, I'm asking you to go ahead and flesh out the beginning and your first talking point, kind of like what we do at the retreat, only flesh it out so it's more professional. So it would be a 15-minute section. It would be your beginning and your first talking point. And what I'm going to ask you to do is by next Monday, by Friday. By Friday, I want you to film that beginning and first talking point, that 15 minutes. I want you to film it. And I'm waiting to talk to Lermai about the best way for you to do it. Oh, here comes Q Artist. Because in the past, we've done it with different programs, and we've done it where people have emailed me, or they've emailed her, or that. But I'm thinking there's a way for us to just do it straight to Member Vault that might be easier, and then we can view them. What we're going to have you guys do, hi sweetness, what we're going to have you do is, I'm talking about the homework. Today, it seems like people would really like help to finish with the rough. Last week's homework was doing the rough, but to finish the rough, flesh out your talking points, make it have interactive pieces, and we can give each other suggestions. But by Wednesday, I'm asking you to have your rough. So I need you to have it done and send it to me by Wednesday before DTLC. Have that rough, and you can go back and rewatch the beginning, Artist, because I don't want to repeat it. And then this Friday, I want you to film your beginning. That means your hook story and the blah, 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 your beginning and your first talking point. And then I will let you know where to send that. I'm talking to Lermai today with our admin. Yeah, Wendy.
I was wondering this morning, and I know you said it, but how long should a keynote approximately be?
Anywhere from 45 to an hour, 45 to 60 minutes. I like to plan for about 45 to 50, because usually they have, like, if it's religious speaking, they have a song and they have a prayer, and then they do your bio. And if it's regular speaking, a lot of times the conference is going over. So I like to plan for 45 to 50, and then I have stuff in the hopper. If I need to extend it, I'll ask more questions, or if not, then I can shorten it and I can put it back to 30 minutes. Great question. So if you guys can plan on that, filming by Friday, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to random pull from a hat. I'm going to pair you guys up, and you're going to peer review that person's video. And on Wednesday, we're going to go through the peer review process. It's really easy. It's got a little form. And when we do our breakout coaching, which we will actually do on Wednesday, I'm going to teach you the peer review. It's super easy. And then I'll let you know who you're going to peer review. And it's really important that when we do this peer review, you actually do it, because this helps so much. It's really different to think of what you look like in your mind versus what you actually do when you're on camera. And it's really helpful to get that feedback early on, because then you can correct little things that you can just get better and better and better at. So does that sound like a plan? Does that sound doable? Yes, it should feel like a nudge, but not like a whoo, I'm totally fire hosed. All right. Hey, so today we have, since Wendy Jones just finished her retreat, I asked her if she would take 5 minutes-ish, maybe 6, whatever you need. But just to give a quick snapshot, we're having her share in DTLC on Wednesday. So we don't need to go more in depth on the actual retreat and all the things and all the highlights. What I want it to be more today is more specific to the speaking. What her experience was, like a quick snapshot of, okay, this is what we did at the retreat and this is how it went. It was great, blah, blah, blah. But then on the speaking, what was it like preparing your presentations or your presenters? What worked, what didn't, what you want to do differently? And then, like you said, takeaways, if you have takeaways. So anywhere in there, 5 to 7, 10 minutes, whatever you need, but just kind of a snapshot of that. Sound like a plan? And then after that, we're going to go through, I've got 5 keys for retreat speaking that I want to share while the retreat is fresh, because Wendy's talking about her retreat, and then I'm going to talk about mine, so you can really get retreat speaking today, which I think is just perfect, top of mind, fresh stuff. And then any questions that you have before we head out, that's what we'll do. And then I'll give you the next, remind you of the next assignment. But first, I just want to share the scripture. As you saw, like I had been felt to read Ammon 27 and how he was just like rejoicing and glorying in the Lord, which I think is kind of funny. I mean, in Ammon chapter 26, because in 26, he's all rejoicing. And then what does his brother Aaron say to him? Pipe down. I think you're getting a little carried away, right? And he's like, who can glory in the Lord too much? I think it's funny that 3 chapters later, Anna has a whole chapter on glorying in the Lord and why does he sin in his wish and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's siblings. Yeah, you pipe down. But the other one's like, hey, I don't care. I'm speaking for a whole chapter. I just thought it was funny. But Alma 29 says, oh, that famous scripture, oh, that I were an angel and could have the wish of mine heart, that I might go forth and speak with the trump of God, with a voice to shake the earth and cry repentance unto every people, exclamation mark. I just felt that way, and I'm sure you felt that way, Wendy, where you just wanted to open this up to every single person, every single woman, and say, come on in. It's right here for you, and you're gonna love it, and it's gonna change your life. I was talking to one of the DTL retreat ladies that's thinking about being DTLC, and I was talking with her last night, and she just said, Connie, you said it would be life-changing, and it beyond, like, just so changed my life. I've already been talking with my family. I'm already sharing my learning with them. It's already changed my husband and his trajectory of what he's going to do. I mean, it was just like, wow. And I'm sure Wendy has seen the same thing. Just knowing these principles, that we get to be a conduit of it, and that the principles and the spirit are the things that are changing lives. And we just get to be an assistant in the work is just amazing. I drove home and I was so floored. Just, wow, he trusts us. Even with all of our imperfections, he still trusts us and allows us to be a part of it. It's just beautiful. So, sweet Wendy Jones, take it away and share us your goodies.
Okay. Well, if I had to compare the 2 retreats, it would be very hard to say one is better than the other because they were both so phenomenal.
You mean like your first one and then this one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not my first workshop. I'm talking the first retreat that I did in September and then this one. But the biggest takeaway was probably how we presented. Our messages were pretty much the same. Our slideshow presentations were pretty much the same. So there's 4 of us that present. So it's myself. I did an opening welcoming everybody, and I kind of tell a story about kind of inviting them to become new creatures in Christ. And that at this retreat, they're going to have the opportunity to shed old beliefs and to learn new ones, because my 2 life coaches are phenomenal. They are like akin to Wendy Christensen. Like if they knew Wendy, they would like just be best friends. They're just so awesome. They have 2 slideshow presentations, and very different from each other, still kind of talking about how powerful the brain is and how we can change our mindset, but one does it more from a teaching perspective, and she went through and does a whiteboard and actually grabs different situations from the crowd, and this is what we're going to do, and then she works the model with us as a group. And then Laura teaches more about the brain, more about your amygdala and your I'm not going to remember all the brain names, like that's very scientific, but she really talks about how powerful the brain is. And then she walks it. She teaches, she lives the life that she preaches, basically, because while we were at this retreat, Laura, who my partner in all this, has a 16-year-old who's in drug rehab for like the third time, has a 24-year-old who's been in drug rehab 5 times and has tried to commit suicide multiple times. And while we were there, since she's about ready to stand up and speak, and she hands me her phone, and I'm reading a text on her phone, and it says, Kelton has just been arrested. Her 16-year-old that's in a drug treatment. He decided to take a punch at one of the workers, and he'd been arrested and taken to jail. And then she had to stand up there and continue to show joy, because she lives a life of joy. And so what I really learned is that the brain is extremely powerful, because she practices what she preaches. And she got up and just said, this is what just happened. And she goes, I just want you to know that I live my life 95% in joy. My life has 95% chaos. She goes, but it is possible for me to understand that this is God's plan. Respecting my children and their agency as part of God's plan. Anyway, it was so beautiful to see how she practices what she preaches. It was really beautiful. And you couldn't tell that she was inside just feeling the turmoil, because she exhibited and exuded peace. And it was incredible. It was incredible for those women to learn firsthand that she's not lying. Like, we could all feel what she was teaching was absolute truth. So Christy and Laura teach amazing concepts about that kind of stuff. Donna, my retreat director, is a past mission president's wife, and she talks about, she teaches about how God's blessings come to us in different timing, how she listened to a woman give a talk one time in a Stake Relief Society event, and talked about the miracles that come from her temple attendance. So she attends the temple, all of these little miracles. Oh, my daughter got in an accident, she wasn't hurt. My grandson fell from the top of the stairs and he wasn't hurt. And all of these things. Well, she said she walked away from that feeling angry, because that's not how her life is. All the miracles that she wanted to have happen isn't happening, but hers are more long-term and stretched out. And so her talk is staying in the game, because she was a sports player growing up. So her whole talk is about staying in the game when it gets rough. Just so appropriate when it comes down to it. So really, because our retreat is connect, heal, and serve, if their topics if their storytelling and their topics have nothing to do with connect, heal, and serve, we nix it. So we really did change a lot of us dropped slides. We took out things that were unimportant. We took your advice, Connie, and took out too many quotes. A lot of us had a lot of quotes, and we had so many people at the last retreat taking pictures, and we didn't want them to have their phones out. We wanted their pens in hand. So really at the beginning, we really encouraged them to just write notes of promptings that they felt, rather than writing down word for word what we said, or instead of taking pictures of the slides. We just really wanted them to focus on what was being shared. And so I think that was probably the biggest changes, that we really were able to take out slides that just didn't need to be talked about. And I think for me as a presenter, because I did the beginning welcome, which was 20 minutes. And then I did the patriarchal blessing mapping, which is an hour and a half. And then I did hearing the voice of the Lord more clearly, which is teaching all about personal revelation and the pattern of how to get in a habit of hearing it in your own language. And that was a 50-minute class. So almost an hour for my presentations. My first time presenting mapping, I took the full hour and a half because I'm taking them through the process. I had a gal from my retreat who has taught mapping 3 different times in groups. She's had women's groups come to her house and she's taught it. So I actually had her come back and teach mapping because I felt like as a participant, she's going to be able to teach it even better because she's done it recently. And so I had her come back and teach it. So I actually taught for about 35, 40 minutes with my slides and talked about the importance of understanding your map. And then she took them through the MAPPING, which was really awesome because she got to tell her own story and how it's helped her over the past 5-6 months. And it was great. And she was really well received. So I kind of like the idea of bringing in other speakers. I mean, the first retreat with you, Connie, it was you, which was amazing and mind blowing. And Lamira's part was so good. But what I really love seeing from this retreat that you did this past weekend is seeing all of your past participants helping you to teach the course. And I think that that's not that what your part wasn't incredible, but you didn't have past participants to pull from. And how beautiful that you can bring them back and then have them teach their peers, because then you're seeing people take your course and implement it into their businesses. So I just think that's so beautiful. So I think the takeaways for me was bring other people in, take out the slides that are not as important, and don't put up as many quotes. And the quotes we left in were power punchers. We left the ones in that were like, wham, that is just exactly what they needed to hear. And this time I really was more off the cuff than I was staying with my slides. I felt very prompted to take it in a different direction at some points and started to talk about language and hearing the voice of the Lord in your own language and your own voice. And all of a sudden I found myself talking about how much I love language and how when I meet people, I'm trying to figure out where's their accent from, because I'm a linguist. I love language. I love figuring out what dialect there's, and I'm fascinated. And I just said, and I'm fascinated that the Spirit of the Lord actually speaks to us in our own language. And so when we're hearing it in our own minds, how many times do you hear people with questions saying, I didn't know if it was my own thought or if it was the Spirit? And I'm teaching the women that if the thought comes to you and the possible outcome is going to be positive, give credit to the Spirit, and 99% of the time you're going to be right. And so I found myself kind of doing a little segue into language and being able to understand the language of the Lord. And so I found it was way more powerful this time, because instead of staying on course and going, my bullet point, I had my slides typed up on a piece of paper, and then I had possible things that I could talk about, but they weren't necessary if I didn't need it. So if I felt like I was falling short, I had things to fall back on, but I didn't have to utilize it. And I found that the speaking off the cuff worked way better. And after I finished on the Revelation portion of it, we broke for lunch, and both my moms, I had both my mom and my mother-in-law there, which was such a treat. I thought I was going to be really nervous presenting in front of them because I admire both of them so much, but it was really just an honor to have both of them there. And they both pulled me aside and said, you are so good at speaking when it doesn't feel like it's forced, when you're just speaking from the heart and really allowing the Spirit to just ebb and flow. And a lot of the stuff that I had written down, I didn't even touch on or get to, but that's not what the Spirit told me to do. So really the best advice and the biggest takeaway for me was speaking off the cuff, speaking from the heart, and following the Spirit. So it was a phenomenal weekend. And every single woman that would come up to me and say, this was amazing, this was amazing. I had so many pivot points in my life, and I had so many mindset shifts, and I've been thinking about things all wrong. And thank you so much for being so amazing. And I had to stop them every time. I'm like, you can thank me for being obedient, and that is all, because I'm not amazing. I'm not an incredible person. I'm just super, super obedient. And I have been my whole life. I've always been a good kid. I never did anything to disappoint my parents. I don't even go above the speed limit. I'm like one of those people that just like really, really is an obedient person. And so like, I truly know I am a good speaker, but it's because I'm obedient to following the way the Spirit wanted me to teach. So it was just mind-blowingly good. It was so awesome.
Oh my gosh. And we could feel it from your posts and the reels and things like that. I just did it late. And so I didn't see it before then, but it was just joy, pure joy. And I just felt this sense of like sisterhood thing of she's doing it and it's working so beautifully. And oh my gosh, it was just wonderful and beautifully done. And I love, she was talking earlier about the age range that they had, where before it was more specific, 45 to 35 to 55, 45 to 60 or whatever. But this time it was, they had a 19-year-old all the way up to a 72-year-old, which I love seeing her lay the baseboard. That was the coolest. But just opening up to letting, this is just a really important thing about retreat and retreat speaking, letting every retreat be what it needs to be. And I've shared with you before my concern about, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to replicate the experience? And really the focus that we had this last time was, I mean, we have it every time, but we really drilled down, just like you were saying, what us creating the elements. Just think about what we just studied about the 6 days of creation. It was all about the elements, and each day built on the next and the next, so it could create and support life, right? And so if we create the right elements and the right environment, then the Spirit can't be restrained. The angels can't be restrained. So if we create that environment and provide those elements, make sure that they're there, then something beautiful is going to happen. I liken it to having the right ingredients. If you have the right quality ingredients, it doesn't really matter what you make, a tostada, a burrito, whatever. It doesn't really matter. If you have the right quality ingredients, it's going to be something delicious. And that's what we want for them, exactly what it needs to be for that group in that retreat. And I think you probably noticed there's a different feel to every retreat. There's a different energy. There's a different conglomeration of women. And it's just amazing. What our January one last year was just high energy and bouncing and laughing and go. And this one was so sublime and unity. And I mean, we had unity last time, but just it was just this sort of like temple-like yummy experience kind of the whole time. But if I would have kept my energy at what we had last January, which was needed because you guys had that high energy, those women this time would have been bowled over. They would have been exhausted. They would have been hiding in their room. So it really is an important thing to create the elements of a retreat and really pray about the women coming. And then when they come, adjusting your energy to what they need, and not just, well, I'm going to do it the same way that I've done it, and I'm just going to wow them. Really paying attention to what the feel is, read the room and read the energy and the spirit that's there and what they need in the way that they need it. That's a really, really important thing about doing these retreats. I love everything you shared, and I love your takeaways, and I love that you were bold and brave to do less content. Less is more. And the fact that you knew your stuff so well, once you have it's that truth, the truth will set you free. And it's that when you have the knowledge, it will set you free to be able to be extemporaneous. It's when we just wing it, but we don't really know our stuff, that's when we start getting in trouble. But if we know what it is we want to say, and we know we've done it several times, that is the joy, is that we allow ourselves, trust ourselves. And I love that you trusted yourself to be able to go, I can go off the cuff on this. I agree, Wendy. I think your style is very attuned to that. There's really two kind of content speaking styles like that. There's a lot, but just these two kind of main ones. There's script people and there's bullet point people. And it really is important, even bullet point people. It's kind of like with writing, either you're an outliner or you're a pantser, right? That's what they mean. Like you just do it, sit down and just start writing. But even pantsers benefit by outlining. And even outliners benefit by veering off the outline and just going in the moment and the flow of what they're feeling. So find out which one is more of your primary, but bring in the other one as well. So I so invite you to, even at sections that you may feel uncomfortable with or not sure if it's going to go well, it really is wise to write it out, actually write it out, go back and kind of pare it down, and then be able to feel like, I think I've got those key paragraphs. One thing that I like to do in this, I go from the bullet point first, because that's how I brain dump. I just brain dump what's the topic, what are the 3 points that I want to do. That's how I do my Studio 5. And now it's just how I do it for everything. And that's my 3 points. So I know what I want. And then I put little dashes. So I'll do the main point, the main talking point, and I'll do an asterisk for the sub point. And then I'll do dashes for if this is an experience I want to share. I'll do EX for an example. I'll do QT for a quote. I'll do SC for a scripture. So I just bullet point these things as I'm thinking them. And then I go back and I kind of piece things around, kind of piece it. And then I look at it and say, okay, I want to start speaking it. I'll speak it in the shower. I'll speak it while I get my makeup on, so I can hear myself speak it. Now, when I did You Got This Interfaith conference, we had spent so much time and energy on doing all the planning of the conference, which was huge, that we had a little section of a keynote. We each took 15 minutes of the keynote. So I only had 15 minutes to get 3 key points across because I needed them to do a certain activity. So beforehand, I literally was talking it through. I bulleted, and then I talked it through, and then I knew I had to remember it like super fast. So I took sticky notes backstage, and I just wrote out the bullet points again with just the experience and then just the quote that I wanted to share, so that in my mind's eye, as I was talking, I could see the sticky note in my mind. And I knew what was the point, what was the experience, what was the quote, so that if I was talking shma between, I knew the thread I needed to keep running through, which was I'm leading this point to the quote, to the experience, to the thought-provoking question, them do their share, go to the next point. I mean, we're talking down and dirty 5 minutes each, and I had to be spot on. And it helped me so much to just, even if you don't write it out in script, speak it, say it, keep rewriting it on sticky notes or something so that it gets cemented in your head, and then it will stay. And I have to tell you, I was scared to death because I had no time to prepare that. And when I got done, that's the one I came backstage and Clint Pulver was standing there and he said, "You killed it." And I was like, yes! So it really does work to, if you're not a scripter, so to speak, keep repeating, writing it. so that it just has this file drawer that just gets drilled into it. And it's that neural pathway that just becomes familiar, like a path that you keep walking and walking and it gets ground down and kind of grooved. You want to have it be grooved so that as soon, try to have the same starter sentence. That's another key thing that I do is I try to have the first starter words or the first starter sentence, because then my brain knows, sort of like an article of faith. My son and I do articles of faith in the morning. I'll say, give me the starter sentence, or I'll give him a starter sentence. We believe in the literal, and then I know I'm off and running because I know what comes after that. Does that make sense? So start with those starter phrases, and that's a great way to remember it as well. Yeah, go ahead.
When you just did that thing where you were like a quote into this, can you just give me that rundown again, just so I can write it?
Oh my gosh, I hope I can remember. I like doing the talking point. So the talking point is the main thing. So maybe it's that sentence of like, if I'm doing a Studio 5 thing, I'm saying purpose changes everything, right? So that's like the talking point. And then underneath that would be an experience. So when I was working with this one woman, she didn't know anything about what she wanted to do, but I took her through a series of questions, and then she was able to narrow down and went from confusion to specificity. And then she acted on it, and she was actually able to go and help at this PTA thing that she needs to create this table and whatever. And she was able to make it work for the thing that she was doing, whatever. So I'll do the talking point, the experience, and I'll do a couple of keywords for that experience. So maybe if it's a personal experience for me, I'll be like, oh, the 5-day challenge. And then I'll know, oh, I'm sharing 5-day challenge, Susan. And then I'll remember, oh, it's Susan that I worked through that thing. And I remember that experience, and I don't need to write the whole thing out. And then underneath that, I'll do QT for like a quote to back it up. And then I'll do something like Russell M. Nelson says about purpose, that there's 2 things we need to know: purpose and identity. And then if I want to add in a scripture, I put in SC, and then I'll add a scripture to it. Now, you guys feel free to do it any way you want. That's just something that's worked for me. I also do color coding, and that helped for a while until I got into a groove. So I still do it sometimes too. If I'm doing a really long, detailed kind of a keynote thing that has a lot of moving pieces, I really like using slides now just for that. I don't use slides a lot. I like to stand and deliver and really connect with the audience, but I love the slides that keep things moving and quotes and things that make it so that I'm not using any paper. I don't like using paper. So sometimes color coding is a really helpful thing. I would do, was it orange it was blue if it was from an authoritative quote, green for experience, scripture was it orange. So anyway, I just had a different color for each thing, so that if I looked at my keynote one sheet, then I knew what was coming up. I have the orange thing for an experience. I have this for a scripture. I know blue is coming for a quote. And I just knew in my mind's eye what was coming. And that helped a lot too, especially when the first few years. So I loved what you said, all those 3 things. I'm just going to give you kind of random tips that reminded me as you were going through, and just kind of mind for whatever is really helpful for you. When you're doing, like she said, she did her slides on one page, and then she had another page for experience and things like that. I love that you found a system that worked. I know for myself, if it's a lengthier slide thing, it's really educational, I like to put in blocks slide or SL, so I know it's a slide. And then I do a buzzword that reminds me what's on that slide. And I'll do like P. Nelson, which is President Nelson, purpose changes. And then I know, oh, that's purpose changes everything. Got it. It's President Nelson. And then if I need to add my other content, my sub points with it to keep the page shorter, I'll just put it on the side, to the side of it. I'll put EX example, 5-day Susan, and then quote, conference, purpose and identity, and then SC scripture. And I'll just put it on that same line. So as I'm going down, I just know I got the slide and this is the content that goes with it, but I can choose to use it or not use it. Then I know what next slide is coming. The reason why that's really helpful is that there's been times when my presenter view hasn't worked, or that they've had a problem with the slides. So that if I can just look at the slides, then I can actually give my keynote, because I know what was on those slides. So I can really actually just go from that. And I've got my experience, my quote, I know what it is, and I can say it from memory. So that's just another thought. Okay, so those things aside, I wanted to bring up a point, this is a little more random, but I loved that you brought up that you said, I'm obedient. And I would invite you to say thank you. I'm sure you did, that you said thank you to him, because it is a little bit like, whoa, I'm just trying to say thank you. And that's the way they're saying it, right? But I loved that you were, in essence, giving glory to God. This last time we were going around the circle, and just like you said, me being able to have 6 presenters instead of Lamira and me was huge. It was just lovely and delicious and glorious. And I noticed this beautiful difference. We wanted to do it that way before, but now we can. And as everyone went around the circle, it was almost to the end and no one had said, oh, Connie was this and it was so great. Connie was so great. And then all of a sudden this one gal goes, wait a second, we haven't said thanks to Connie. And I was like, that means we've done it right. Every single woman was talking about their takeaway and the experience that they had and the women and the moments. That's what we want. If they walk away just thinking, wow, Connie is amazing and great, I've done it wrong. But when you're standing there speaking to them for almost 3 days in a row, it's kind of hard to get away from that because they're in this amazing environment. And so they naturally will tag it to you. I call it the MTC syndrome because I had my missionaries when I taught in the MTC, you're the only person they see, right? He had 3 teachers and they saw you for like 6 hours at a time. So of course they thought you walked on water, right? We kept telling them, no, it's just because you're not seeing anybody else. Promise you they were totally imperfect and human. So we want to make sure we keep throwing it back to the Savior and keep saying, it's the spirit that you guys have brought. It's the elements that we've prepared. And we've all made this work together. And we've made this creation, this actual creation together that's never been done before. And help them feel the ownership of that, the piece of that. They didn't just come and sit. They actually owned being part of this creation. And that's a huge thing for them to feel and know and take ownership in. So that's just a thought. And on that note, I'm just checking these off as I go. I love that you brought up about the different presenters. We're going to talk in just a second. I'm going to ask you guys what were things that stood out to you from speakers at the retreat, just like Wendy noticed for her presenters. The things that I loved is that everybody, like you said, they had their storytelling relate back to the red threads, those key points. So when you're doing a retreat or you're doing your luncheon or your brunchin, it's a new one. We call our thing dinner when it's lunch and dinner after church. Okay, so your brunch. You want to make sure that whatever points you're having people speak on or that you're speaking on, it needs to come back to that umbrella topic. And then your subtopics, which I'm thinking from last week, you're still thinking it's the 3 points of the garden, because that just makes total sense. You want to have that red thread be so consistent that when people hear that topic, they're like, oh, that's Artis. That's Artis & Co. You want people to start making a file drawer that when they're doing a conference or they're doing some kind of thing, they're like, we need something that connects families. What would that be? And someone goes, oh, there's this gal that does healing families through generational gardening. Yeah, and she talks about this, and this. Easy to remember. Then that's how people remember you and recommend you for speaking. Is they're like, oh, that would be a fit. So that's something to consider. That's also in anything that you do. I just this morning, as I was getting the makeup on, and I was like, okay, how can we make today more interactive? What's top of mind? What's fresh? What's real? What's happening right now? And I was like, Wendy Jones just had a retreat, talk about speaking. So I reached out to her and she was like, sure, I'm happy to do that. And then that got me thinking about, I was doing points for storytelling, getting that all prepared. And I was like, wait a second, I remember Angela Ingo talking about how she was studying storytelling and she learned all these different things. Well, anyone talking is going to be better than me. It's fresh and new for them. They're like, oh, I didn't know these things. They're going to see it from a whole new perspective. I was like, would you like to present on that? I would love to have you share your thoughts. She was like, sure. Now, who is getting even more learning? Angela, if I sat there and just told her, here's the 7 points of storytelling, how much is she actually going to take away? That now that she's going to present about it, something she was already interested in, and now she's going to present, how much more of a life change is that going to be for her? How much more is she going to put that in her actual speaking? Tons more. So anytime that you can have something in your brunch, your retreat, whatever it is, just like you were saying, whatever those topics are, have the person that it resonates with or passionate about. But also, here's a caveat, make sure you have them submit what they're going to share with you to you, unless you've seen them speak on it before and you know what they speak on. And so you're like, yeah, I can check that off. You will avoid not happy surprises by having them submit. Now, you can do it very simply. You can just say, email your 3 talking points, and then just email the resource underneath that you're going to use, especially any spiritual resources. I would so invite you, even people you know, even people that you totally trust, whatever spiritual resources they're going to quote from, make sure you know what those are. I remember way early, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I had a retreat that I did at a cabin and we were able to get this multi-million-dollar cabin. And I had these women there, and a friend said, oh, there's this gal that I know, she speaks about the being intuitive with the spirit and things like that. And it's really great. It's wonderful. Well, I was all like giddy. Sure, that sounds great, because I knew her. And I didn't understand that she had heard her speak before. It was just like once, and she didn't really know exactly what she spoke on, but it was really powerful, the piece that she did hear. Well, the gal comes, and before you know it, she starts getting off on angels and all this stuff that was just sort of going off on this direction. Now, angels are fine, but the way she was going about it was like, I just started kind of like this, and like, okay, I'm in charge. What do I do here? And I kept looking at her friend, like, you might want to kind of have her wrap up. And finally, I'm the one that had to lean forward and go, thank you so much. So appreciate it. I know we only have 1 more minute to wrap up. Thank you so much. If you just want to give us your last takeaway and then move on. But Allah. So even with people for this retreat, I had them submit that. It's good practice for them, because even education week, especially education week, they make you bullet point everything and have all the resources you're going to use, and they vet your title. I mean, it's serious, because they know that you are teaching spiritual content. So I still invite you to just be aware of that and invite your presenters, even if you know them super well, just say, this is our policy, this is our protocol. Just go ahead and send that into us so that we just know. I also like to say, and it's a true thing, we want to make sure we're not overlapping, right? Because someone may be talking about true identity like they did in this one, and someone else might be talking about something else, but bring in true identity. So we want to make sure there wasn't this overlap and they're getting the same thing. So it's just a good thing to do. And it's just, again, tightens the ship and makes it, you can scale. Because as you get bigger and bigger and you go into other cities and states, then you want to make sure that you have this sort of policy and protocol so that you know the quality is going to be consistent. You know, if you do EFY here, you do it in Texas, it's going to be the same format. It's going to be, you know what to expect. You go to award here, you go to award in Hawaii, you know the same format is going to be there, and you know what to anticipate. You know what to expect, even if there's things that are out of our control, you still know what can be expected. So something to consider. Okay, really quick, I wanted to give you 4 kinds of retreat presenting, okay? So the first one, and you alluded to them, it was so fantastic. First one is the welcome and pre-frame. That welcome and pre-frame sets the tone of the retreat. So in this welcome and pre-frame, it starts even before you get up and speak anything. You want to make sure that those women just come and they are soaked and immersed in love. When they, we texted them before, say, hey, text us when you get here, coming through the side door, so text when you get here. And then we had a little chalkboard that said, welcome, disciple thought leaders, or balloons, whatever you want to have. And then when people were pulling up, we were popping out the door and like waving and saying, hey, do you need help with your stuff? And bring them in. And then we had Ashley, who did the welcome table. And this, she welcomed each person individually so that Ingrid could go and do the food. So we had Ashley welcome them, and then we had everything laid out on the table, and she walked them through the welcome table and then walked them up to their room. And we had their names up there, their swag bag on the bed. We had everything just so, and gave them a very personal interaction. The team people made sure to go, and everybody made sure they give them a high touch right then and throughout the weekend, giving them hugs, asking how they're doing, how are they liking their retreat, making sure that high touch flows throughout the weekend. One of the biggest things we've seen when we get in, feedback, when we ask for feedback, what is one of the most important things that they got from the retreat, the thing they loved the most? What do you think it is?
Was it that they felt nurtured?
Really, same kind of thing, connection. It was the connection. Even though we're teaching them all kinds of amazing, cool things that they loved the connection. So they want to feel connected to you and I, especially the team. And you DTLC returnees are just invaluable. You are these wise older sisters. You're just grounded in the spirit. You know what's being talked about. Those women just feel so safe. They feel so safe and so loved. So we want to create a safe, nurturing environment that they feel so safe. Now we know that it worked, what we did with the welcome and pre-frame. And we did a couple of different things this time. This time we did, we had a poster. I was talking to the gals beforehand. I'm like, we need to do an activity that we get to know each other, but no fruit basket. Do not want to even do anything close to it. Yuck. So then we kind of brainstormed, and I had this thing about, okay, what if we put a poster on the wall and we da-da-da. Well, after the brainstorming, we figured out we would do like cute poster paper, like They had labels printed off with their color pictures. So they had a whole thing of Avery labels with their color pictures. There you go. And then we had them come in and then just put their picture under the things that, oh, I have a pet, I have a whatever. It was the cutest thing. People standing there, and we put it right there where you eat. So people could look up and see what people did, and it was a touch point. And then of course we had our Post-it notes that people could do all weekend long. So those things immediately started that welcome and pre-frame in such a good way. And this time, instead of sitting at the table and doing pre-frame, we let Ingrid set up the table and we pulled them over into the couch area. And those questions that are the pre-questions that we have them figure out so they can be doing that while they're just kind of coming and getting settled in. I pulled different questions from the jar, and we just did like maybe 3 in the seating area to kind of laugh, get some things, connect, blah, blah, blah. And then we went over to the table. And as I was going to pull a couple more at the table while we started dinner. Everyone got their plates, and then we're going to do a little bit more. Oh, let me back up. And the first thing I did was a few questions, and then I did the pre-frame right there, sitting on the couches. I did the pre-frame, what to expect, and just kind of gave a very quick overview. The 3 things that we're doing, we did connection, courage, and connection, and just a little quick thing, the swing quote. So just a little kind of devotional thought, get that touchy-feely thing going. We had done a few questions to get that laughter and connection. Then you want to layer, uncover by layers. And because you don't have a lot of time at a retreat, you've got to really move quick. So you want to do fun kind of connecting one. Do not do favorite color. Please do not. But the board thing, that's what that was. It's kind of that really first, I don't even know you. Here's some safe things I can say. Then move to the couches. It's a connecting place. Here's some other questions. What's a challenge we're overcome? The first thing I was at was like, who experienced opposition? Come in here. And they're like, oh my word. And then they're going through all the things that happen. And they're connecting on that. So that's second layer. Then we go to the table and third layer. You don't have to do it like this, but I encourage you to get those layers in some fashion. Went to the table and I was going to do more questions. And then the feeling thought came. Ask them, what is one thing that people would not know about you just looking at you? What's one thing? Now, in my mind's eye, I thought that meant like years ago, that was done at a party thing. And this guy said, oh, I used to be Channel 4 weatherman. And we would never have guessed that about him. And I thought it might be something, light and happy like that. It went deep so fast, where we had one gal that shared something. She said, I haven't shared this with anyone outside my family, but it's really a hard thing, but not share with anyone. This is in the first hour of everyone getting together. I was like, holy cow. And what did that do? It opened up the floodgates for everybody else to get really close very quickly. It was beautiful. So that's the first kind of speaking, is the welcome, the pre-frame. It's really important to set the tone. And whatever you do, please, 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 just nourish them with love. Let them know it's a safe space, that everybody is welcome, that you're accepted. We had one gal, her husband texted me. She was on her way. And he said, I just want you to know her anxiety is off the charts. She was lucky to get in the car. And I knew it. She had been on my mind, and I was just praying for her. So I texted him back and I said, don't you worry. We're just going to soak her in love. And that's what we brought her in, and we just gave her love and hugged her during the weekend. And oh my gosh, it was just beautiful. And she could tell she was in a safe space. And that's what she said the whole weekend. She said, I cannot believe that there is a group of women like this that is so safe and so positive and so supportive. So the whole weekend achieving that, which is what you do in your retreats. But in your retreats, again, it's not necessarily the content. These women are starved for just loving connection together and supportive women connection. So that's the first one. The second one is the principles and practices presenting. So those are the presenters that are actually going to teach your principles and practices. I think I heard you say concept teaching. So your principles and practices, concepts, whatever you want to call it. I like principles and practices just because we need to have the presenters. I ask them, what are the principles and what are their interactive practices that are going to go with it? So with those principles and practices, just like you were saying, Wendy, using examples and stories from their own life of actually applying things and how this actually works. So Amanda did a great job. She's been reading up on marketing. She had shown it to me. I said, can you teach this at the retreat? She said, you bet. She did a one-page called One Page Marketing. And it made this one-page marketing plan so easy, so slick. And then she went this extra mile, and she was reading all these different marketing books, and she found this funnel thing and talked about the sales funnel. So she already showed the regular funnel. And then, oh, we've got admit artist. Okay, I'm going to put you in because you're leaving. Got you. Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
I just have to switch. I got to get in the car, but I want to keep listening. So
okay, no worries at all. Sorry, what was I just saying? Amanda, sorry. So she took this funnel, and she had what funnel would be good to do for marketing and did it in 5 steps. And then she did disciple funnel and how it looks as a disciple thought leader. And then she went through how it went for her working through it as she did it in her own life. So it was beautiful that she took something that they needed to learn and then how she had learned it, applied it and all of that right there with the disciple thought leader lens, which led it right back to what we wanted her to do. So I loved that. The third is specialty presenting. So those are those specialty topics that we do money mindset, we do the let go meditation, the abundance meditation. Those are the specialty ones that are things that maybe don't go with the necessarily your big juicy topics, but they're things that the women need and whatever that might be. And again, these can just be 10, 15 minutes. You just put them in a great sort of almost a devotional in the morning or something right after lunch to kind of kick up their gear. The money mindset is a really good thing to do if you're going to invite them to a call to action that's going to require them to invest in themselves, because it gets their mind open and thinking possibilities. And I need to step outside my box and know that God is abundant and I can rely on him and I can move in that lens. So that's something to consider, that specialty speaking and placing them in places that make sense, like the 6 days of creation, putting them so that it will build and build and build. And it will be at a time, if you're going to talk about marketing, well, we talked Saturday morning about fear versus faith. And faith versus fear, because I heard a lot of women saying, I'm so afraid, I don't want to put myself out there, blah, blah, blah. Well, we're going to talk about marketing, which is marketing you and your stuff for him, right? So we needed to get them out of that space of, oh, but I don't want to be out there, and letting them remember you are a light on a hill and you are the conduit of his light. And as long as you lead them back to his light, that's what you're to do. So it kind of shifted the dynamic. So now when we're talking about marketing, they're not resisting and saying, but that's not me and I don't want to do that. So does that make sense? Using those specialty presentations and using them where it makes sense. Oh, and back on the principles and practices, I meant to say, make sure your principles are clear. When they leave, they could recite them back to you. Throughout the retreat, I said each time we got into a new session, I would say, okay, last night we talked about what? We have 4 M's. What are them? And try to make it easy to remember. What is that? And that first one, mindset. And we have a buzzword that goes with each one of them. You don't have to do that, but make sure whatever those concepts are, I kept asking so they could remember. And then they remembered for him and prepare. And it helped them to remember what it is that we went. Why? Because when they leave, we want them to remember it. And when they're talking to their families, what did you learn this weekend? Oh, I learned 4 M's. I learned mindset, mission, message, and marketing. And I learned how to do it for him. We want them to be able to really know and feel this and take it with them. And then the last one is share speaking or discussion speaking. This is those moments that you want to block in for sharing, for coaching together. We find that some of the most significant experiences that they have is when they have their time to coach each other. So again, like Wendy was saying, less content. And this time I did so much less content. I even pared it down to just one key talk and kept it to that with a few ancillary quotes after added on. But making sure that discussion speaking, it involves them and it has a specific purpose. We actually even used a timer this time because the women can get off on tangents. There's always the one that takes over the conversation. So really watch for that discussion speaking because it's so powerful. As you help them talk together, they will make friendships, they'll make connections. And then what do they want to do? They want to stay in touch. That means they want to come to your community. That means they want to come to your next retreat. That means they want to be a part of the sisterhood. So that discussion speaking is really, really crucial. And in the past, I haven't been as good as making sure that we've had enough of that because I thought, oh, they need so much content in the first or second one. But you know what I found is that in the last January one, where were you guys having your discussion? In the hallway, right? And with each other on the bed. And you were like having these discussions and we kept ringing the bell, right? And then we learned pretty quickly, hey, magic is happening in those times. So we need to give them time for that. So that was the main things I wanted to share with you today. I have another 5 keys, but we won't have time for that today. And I don't want to overwhelm you because we have lots of time to share these other points and things. And that's more for any presentation, not just specific retreat. But I hope this was okay for you guys because I really wanted, when it's top of mind and it's fresh, that's the best time for us to teach these concepts because you know what we're talking about. And also you can relate it back immediately. And you can imagine in your own mind, how do I want to apply this to my event, my retreat, the thing that I want to do, my workshop, whatever. So any questions or thoughts on what I've shared, anything that came to mind that you wanted to additionally share, or anything that you were like, I have a question on?
Mine's not really a question, but I have to say that, I could compare a year last year to this one and I could feel the difference. And it was very, I don't know how to explain it. It was still just as impactful, but the energy, I felt like it flowed for me anyways. You could feel it was very palpable. It was very different, but it was really, really good, very calming. And it flowed so beautifully, I think, for all of those women.
Thank you so much. In fact, I said the same thing. The word I kept using this time was sublime. And I was telling my daughter as I was describing it to her, she said, it sounds paced. And I was like, that's what it was. It was an ease and flow where there wasn't this fire hose feeling necessarily. There were moments where there was a good amount, but it just felt this ease and flow. That also pertained to the kind of women that were there. There was a very thick spirit there. It wasn't kind of high energy spirit. It was just a thick, more grounded, more thoughty kind of energy. And so all the energies are great. I love it. It's like primary is great. Relief Society is great. Young women's great. It all has a different energy. But I did notice that. And that's why I just felt this sublime feeling. And I also feel like, I don't know how long I thought every retreat was fabulous and there was fabulous things about it. And I felt like this time we kind of hit our stride. We knew the place. We were in the same place and it was a great place and it worked. And the food was great and we had more catered and that was beautiful and it was beautifully presented. It was abundant and overflowing. And the presenting was great and it flowed and it was connected. The evening coaching things, those were timed better. I didn't keep going over and everything just seemed like we've hit our stride. So anyway, it's a great feeling. It's taken us 6 to feel like with all the content that we teach, I feel like we hit our stride of being able to give that to them in a way that could be received and that they loved the receiving of it. So anyway, Wendy.
I was just going to say the difference from, obviously there's going to be a difference because I've grown a lot. Wendy and I have grown a lot in the past year since that first retreat, but I think the level of confidence that has gone up. And I think I was trying to figure out why that it's come because I've only really done, I've done 3 events, but only 2 retreats. And why is it that I all of a sudden feel more confident in speaking in front of women? Because I actually feel like it's easier to speak in state conference or in your ward in front of a lot of people than a smaller group of peers who are similar in age to. It's harder. And I'm wondering why is that? And I think what it is you give us opportunities to teach or present or share spiritual thoughts among peers on a week-to-week basis. And I think, and then getting into small groups and having to present ideas to each other and different things like that, I think that's practiced in the fact that some of us have come back to your retreat and presented. It's those things that get us ready to speak in front of peer groups because we've had so much experience, because I wasn't afraid at all. Like I never had nerves. I stood up there and I was just able to present with absolute clarity and confidence. And to think that was 1 year ago. I was teaching this past weekend, 1 year from that first retreat. So 12 months I've gone from like being afraid and nervous and do I really have anything to offer anybody to, I absolutely know my purpose. I know my messages. My 3 points were, the taking over the wheel, not letting Satan drive you around town anymore, studying your map and paying attention to your GPS, which is personal revelation. So all of mine was like, and then at the very end, before we wrapped everything up, I talked to them about getting in your lane and staying in your lane. Don't worry about what so-and-so is doing and don't worry about this and just getting in your lane, because you have a purpose to do and you have gifts that were given to you. And as soon as you focus on those gifts, you'll be able to get further because you're not looking off to the side, paying attention to what everyone else is doing. Just get in your lane and stay driving. And man, once you get I guess that's probably my keynote, probably is my mini keynote is that, because I've got to present it at a Stake Women's Conference in March, and I've got to have my keynote fine-tuned because I have to present that without teaching mapping because I don't have the time to do it. So I've got to be able to touch on it and be able to drive that message home. But
just going to interrupt, then you can lead that as a freebie to them and say, if you'd like to do this, I'm going to touch on this, but if you'd like to do this, I have a free download for you at whatever, and run it by the Stake Relief Society president. I always do that if I have a free something, and they're usually great about it. I have like a free mini life plan. I'm like, here, it's just for them to have. So anyway, something to consider. Okay. I love those points. Absolutely love those points. And it's so huge what you're saying. And I also thought as you were talking, think how often you've been telling people about what you do. and talking to your team, gathering your team and people who are new, and you're having to articulate your one big message, your one big thing, why you do what you do, what your outcomes are. Think about all the times you've had to do that. This is strengthening your core speaking and being able to do and say the very things you want to do and say, and you're getting better and more articulate, and you're adjusting each time you're talking to a sponsor, to a potential team member. So you've been doing all that all these months. It's just gorgeous. And I'm so sorry, I forgot number 5, which was the wrap up. The wrap up is so important that I forgot it. The wrap up is whatever way you want to do that. And I'm sure you did something, particular that was unique to you. And I love that you had that same thread about the whole driving and the GPS and all of that, so that it's thematic, so they can remember this stuff. The wrap up is so important. You remember, we have them kind of finish up with their 90-day plan, so they can take that and hit the ground running, and they're kind of, downloading everything, getting it on paper. This time we actually had time for last questions, so that we could ask, is there any questions before you leave that you feel like you didn't get to have answered? And then we went into the connection circle, and that's our last takeaways. And we asked, what is one takeaway that you had and your one next right step? What is that for you? And it was just beautiful going around and hearing those things. So the 5, once again, are welcome and pre-frame, principles and practices speaking. This is all different speaking. So there's the welcome and pre-frame speaking, principles and practices speaking, specialty speaking, then share speaking or discussion speaking, whichever one you want to call it. And then 5th is wrap up speaking. So that's where you really want to end with that final punch quote. I loved how you talked about just keeping the quotes that are that punch thing, that really just nail the thing that you were trying to say, because it gives that second witness. We're going to talk about second witness in the DTLC, how important that is in what you're doing, that you get that second witness, whether it's a quote, a stat, or something else, because that's a concept in the scriptures about having a second witness. So those are the 5. And I hope they're helpful when you're thinking about doing your retreat presenting, and what kinds of presenting you need, and then what they need to be able to do in their presenting. Loved the real life examples, Wendy. Just the joy we have for you. It just feels so good. One lady I was talking to, she's like, I just can't believe the spirit here. It's not this competitive feeling at all. And I said, you know why? Because every single woman knows it's for him. So even if we start to go there or start to compare or whatever, we can stop it, because we go, oh, no, it's all for him. So it's everyone is on the same boat, paddling to the same place. And we're all wanting to get there successfully and help one another to do it. So just kudos to you guys for all that you've done to be these examples and actually making this happen in real life. Wendy, we are astonished, but not really, because it's you and the spirit, but we are astonished at all the things that you are doing with the spirit, with his help, with the org, to make the tools, to your team, and how beautifully you're managing them. It's just gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And so let us know what we can do to help you as you up level, as you scale. We are your support system. We're super happy to be here and help you. Okay. Love you, ladies. All right. Ladies that are watching later, sweet Amanda, we love you. We missed you. And artists, happy time with your super sweet kids. And let me know. Remember, I'll just remind you on the assignment, your Keystone keynote needs to be roughed before DTLC on Wednesday, so that you can send it to me, and really send it as soon as you can on Wednesday, would you? Because I'd like to look it over before the DTLC, but before the DTLC, so at 11:30, because I have a meeting at 11:30 to 12. So before the DTLC, we'll say 11:30. And then on Wednesday, we will talk about peer review and filming, and how you can give feedback on someone's film. And then by Friday, by 5, we're going to have you email in, or do some way, send in your 15-minute video of you doing your beginning and first talking point. Now, if you don't take the full 15 minutes, don't stress it, because sometimes when I'm doing a keynote, I have my middle piece is the chunkier one, because I'm doing more of an interactive activity. So don't stress it, but it needs to be at least 10 minutes. Your beginning and your first talking point should be a good 8 to 10 minutes. And then if you're like, no, I haven't done interactive activity, so that would take the other 5 minutes. Fantastic. Does that make sense? Everyone know what your assignment is? And then by next Monday, what I want you to do is by Monday before our theme, actually, you know what? I want you to be able to come to speaking having received your video review. Do you think that's possible for you guys to do that by 9 o'clock next Monday? If you film it and send it by Friday at 5, maybe you can return it within 24 hours to the person, and they can watch it and receive it. Would that work? Or should we do Friday at noon? And that gives you more time to do it Friday night. I'm trying to think.
I would probably review on Sunday because I feel perfectly good about working on this stuff on a Sunday because we're doing it for him. So I would probably peer edit on Monday and have it ready to present on Monday. That's just me.
I agree as well. I'm trying to get ready for going on Fresh Living on Thursday, and I'm a little like, so that little extra time would be great.
Okay, I'm so sorry. The gal that I'm supposed to be on coaching in this next one, I just said, hang on a second. So tell me what that looks like for you again, and that's what we'll do. So send the video by when?
Friday at 5.
Friday at 5. And then the person that you reviewed it will receive it by when? Can we say
By
Saturday by
Sunday,
5?
Sunday evening.
Receive it by Sunday evening? Okay, we'll say by Sunday evening. So just sometime Sunday evening, then someone can get up early Monday morning and watch it or whatever it is, however you want to work it. Does that sound good? So Sunday evening means like, by 6, 7, somewhere in there. So you can set it by Sunday evening. All right. All right, my darlings, I'm so sorry. I got to scoot, but I love you. Be prepared for Wednesday. I'm so excited. Text me, post any questions. Okay. Love you, ladies. Great job.